Good morning, everyone. Thanks for giving me the privilege to speak. How mature is your safety culture? Did you know that it is post 10th anniversary? And happy 10th anniversary to Post. Of course, the behavior-based safety rules have been around a lot longer, and we can say that we have arrived. Or have we? Sometimes you think you may not have advanced, but I'm saying whether you're an owner or whether you're a worker, over the last 10 years, we've all been moving forward. And you might say, well, I'm not perfect. And how true that is, we recognize that we aren't perfect. The thing about perfect is we can visualize perfect. We can visualize the perfect driver. We can visualize the perfect family, the perfect vacation, the perfect job. We can visualize the perfect company, which is perfectly safe. We know what that looks like. What we don't know is, of course, what we know is that it's unattainable. Or is it? Like being perfectly safe. Is it unattainable? As you imagine what a perfect company looks like, you know that you've bought into the Post concepts, you've accepted and applied the behavior-based principles to your company. You provided the training. You've provided the equipment to your workers. I drank the Kool-Aid. You're in there. But every time you get close, something else happens. You've experienced an incident or an injury. You have a serious near miss that kept you all night, or you suffered from someone else's poor choices. So after 10 years, you think we should be perfect. But that isn't always so. But we have been making some changes. There has been change. There's a landscape change, and things do move differently. As you think about it, as you reflect, do you do things differently than you did 10 years ago? Do you make different safe work choices than you did 10 years ago? Do you have different expectations of yourself, of your workers, of your supervisors? I would dare say that you do. Do you find yourself telling the folks at home, your kids, that, hey, you shouldn't do that, you should do it this way? Or it bothers you to watch your neighbor doing something really stupid, and you've walked over and you've talked to him and said, hey, listen, let's use this piece of equipment, or let's do it a different way. So you've chosen to intervene, so I'm suggesting, hey, you are on the journey. You are still on the way to being perfect as you think about your safety choices. We recognize that safe work just makes sense if you learned anything over the last 10 years. So take a deep breath. You are changing. Your company is changing. There's always going to be a debate about how far along the safety journey you are. Some may be further along than others. Still, there's reasons for the change. If Post is 10 years old, now you are 10 years older than you were when you heard of Post. So you're getting older, and it's a proven fact that as people get older, they take less risk. We understand risk better. We understand empowerment better. And you've realized that when you tell your workers, no, just do it, just do it, that doesn't always work. And things are changing in that you can't rely on client support or pressure the way you did in the past. Formerly at Imperial Oil, I know we were very actively engaged in what our contractors were doing and how they were executing. And that's changing. That isn't the same as it was a few years ago. But we stumble forward. Anyway, we stumble forward. It's like a bad touchdown or an ugly goal. It still counts. Still counts. So I think there's a certain amount of reason to be able to pat yourself on the back and keep moving forward. We've moved from a climate to a culture. Let me say what I mean for that. In this ever-changing landscape, there used to be a time when there was a safety climate, and the oil company or your customer would say, you got to do this, you got to do that. And so you would comply because you were doing it because that's what the boss wanted, or that's because what your client required. As opposed to a safety culture, which is more the idea that you are carrying this concept of safety, these best practices with you. And it's the permission you give your workers and your supervisors to do what they need to do so that they're safe. So in that respect, you are actually creating your own safety culture. It may be slow, it may be imperceptible, but it is moving forward, and as you move from a climate to a culture. Some things rub off. You know you're not alone. You're sitting in this room. You work with other OPCA contractors. You hang out with other safe work companies. The question is, how deliberate are you? How deliberate are you in this concept of creating a culture at your company, with your workers, with your supervisors? Up until now, it's been kind of hit and miss. Maybe it needs to be a little bit more deliberate. What I'm going to show you now is something that's been around for a long time. It was something that Jim Strasser at Imperial Oil put together a number of years ago, and it's the SPIES model of safety compliance. Before we go through that example there, however, I'm going to make this statement. In an environment where work has always been done a certain way, it still takes courage to make a change, to adopt a new behavior. So as we think of a simple example of safe work, the wearing of some PPE, there's a number of reasons why people will do this, why workers will do this. I will wear my PPE because socially everyone else is doing it. Or I really like the wraparound glasses, but I'm not going to wear those ugly ones. Or politically, people will do it because, well, the boss has told me. Or I won't get my paycheck unless I do this safety compliance. At some point, you may choose to do it intellectually. You say, yeah, this is good. I'm gonna do this because, well, you know, the glasses are here, the gloves are here, but if I have to go back to the truck, I'm not going to bother. So you're getting along the point where you're going to make the safety choice, but only if it's convenient for you, if you feel like it. So as far as safety compliance goes, it's emotional when your coworker gets injured and you suddenly say, ooh, man, I should have had my gloves on, or I should have my glasses on. So it becomes emotional. But of course, where we want people to be, of course, is the spiritual dimension, where it's my best choice all the time. Now, this spiritual concept is always very touchy-feely. It's always kind of freaky. Anyways, let's go on with that. I don't want you to get all bent out of shape, but as I looked for synonyms, words that are similar to spiritual, I come up with a noun and a verb. You see the list there. Under spiritual, you've got spirit, which is a disposition, an attitude, a strength, a character. Or as a verb, it's to inspire, stimulate, spur, motivate, and encourage people. To me, it's like the enthusiasm you get at a pep rally or as a coach gives you before the big game. They're concepts that are entrenched, and you want people to engage in that action. So if spiritual also means to inspire and have spirit, let's look at the last two words in that list, character and encourage. They reflect personal temperaments and attributes, unique as the individual themselves. You're touching something personal when you are asking people to change, because it takes character and it takes courage. So today's mission is, as you listen to the speakers, as you participate in the interactive portions, it's really to be inspired, and to motivate for yourself personally to make your best safety choices, so that you can actually turn around and go and inspire and encourage your staff to choose the best safety practices all the time. So your workers are empowered to have the courage to choose safe work practices all the time. So here are some marks of maturity. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but among other things, you're better than you were. You recognize that workers alone aren't the problem. You may be the problem. Other factors in your company may be the problem. You have been able to assess that, but it's not simply the workers' problem. You and your workers look beyond simple compliance. They're able to demonstrate a healthy tolerance for risk. Read low risk. And regularly, routinely, they choose the safest work options. Your company may recognize and reward safety involvement of your staff. Resilience when something does happen, because stuff happens. And you're able to be resilient if you have an effective incident follow-up process, an effective, clear process that you're able to make sure that the lasting change is there, and so what did happen does not happen again. So this is really, as you're developing towards a safety culture, because Post is 10 years old, what are you doing for the next 10 years? How are you going to sustain this safety performance? How are you going to sustain having a heart for safety that is going to go forward, that will keep you safe and keep your company safe, keep your workers safe? So tomorrow's mission, no matter where you are, there is a next step. Everyone is on the safety continuum. Like we said about that debate about where you are along that safety line, doesn't matter where you are, you can make a next step. Not asking you to be perfect, we are challenging you to take the next step. It doesn't take a majority to change the culture. As an owner or a manager, you know you can exercise the influence you need to in order to move that safety culture along. As a supervisor or as a worker, you have to show and be an example of what work needs to be done and how it needs to be done. But that takes guts and it takes courage. So in the trajectory for the next 10 years, where are you at? What is your next step? You need to identify what you need to do next. Maybe you already know what it is that you need to do. Maybe today, as you listen to the speakers, as you dialogue with other folks, you will learn what is your next step, but you know what it will be. The question is, will you choose to take it? Be encouraged to choose to stumble forward. You are farther along than you think. Thank you for listening.